During this video, I'm going to have a look at the anchor option that can be used with tkinter widgets. The anchor option helps position widgets on a graphical user interface. Let's make an assumption that what you're looking at here is an example of a label. It's a widget in tkinter, and I'm going to say it is a label widget. So let's have a look at how we would describe the different parts of this label. And first of all, when you look at it, you would need to know about the edges. Where are the edges of this label? What are the corners of the label actually referred to as? Well, if we consider this edge here, it's known as north. This edge here is known as south, this edge as west, and this edge as east. Within the tkinter language, when we're using Python, we don't write the full north out, the full south spelling. What you simply do is you call this one N for north, south is S, and we have W and E for west and east, respectively. Of course, the north, south, east, and west, the N, S, W and E are based upon the compass, which you can see I'm representing here with these arrows. Of course, the next thing we need to consider is what about the corners of the widget? Well, we can see that this corner here is known as northwest based on the compass, and this one here, this corner, is known as northeast. If we look at this corner here, it's known as southwest, and this corner, well, that's known as southeast. And again, we're basing all of this on the compass. We again use abbreviations to mark out the corners. For example, northwest is NW, northeast NE, and we can see we have SW and SE for southwest and southeast respectively. And of course, we need to realize that these are also based upon the compass, so I'm showing these dotted lines here pointing to northwest, northeast, and so on. And finally, we can reference the center of the widget with the word center, as you can see here. So you can refer to the various parts of this widget as follows. We know we have north, south, east, and west, which we represent by N, E, S, and W. We know that the corners, they are northwest, northeast, and so on, and they're represented by the following abbreviations. NW for northwest, and the rest are pretty obvious for when you look at the screen. And of course, if we want to mark the center of this widget, you use the word center. Now, everything is an abbreviation apart from the center. You have to write out the full word center. Now, these abbreviations and the full word center are used to help position widgets on your graphical user interface using the anchor option. So if I move this to one side, what you will typically see in code when you're positioning widgets, you will have the use of an option referred to as anchor. And what you would typically do, wherever this option appears, you would make it equal to, in this case, SW, which stands for southwest, and you note that the SW is in quotes because you treat it as a string. So you would see this, and this would help position the widget, and I'll show you an example of this in a moment. But other things you would typically see for the options would be here, where the anchor was set to center, and of course here's another example here where the anchor was set to N. And note the use of the quotes. This is a typical window you would see if you were writing a Python program using tkinter. And you will be aware that you can place your widget onto this window using different methods. You can use pack, you can use grid, and in the last video I showed you how to use the place method to put the widget in a relative position. Now, to help the description I'm going to give in a moment, I'm going to put some dotted lines on this form, and I would like to stress that these dotted lines are being placed there by me using the software I'm using to produce these videos, not a Python program. So let's put the dotted lines there. There's the first one and there's the second. And what we're looking at here is a guideline that allows me to identify the center of the area of the window. And that's this position here. And you can see that's in the relative X position of 0.5, which means I've come across in this direction halfway across the width of the window to draw the dotted line. This is rel Y, and you can see that means I've come halfway down the Y axis to draw this dotted line. And where they cross is obviously the center of this window. Let's consider this program statement, and you can see that I'm creating a label. I'm associating it with a window that I would have created on the previous line. Here I'm setting the text property to a space. I've pressed the space bar here a few times, and I'm making the background color red, and I'm naming the label my underscore label, as you can see here. Now what this is going to give us when the program runs is the following label, and you can see it's red, and you can see that that space that I've put in the code appears here within the label, making the label look a little bit bigger, as you can see. Let's go on and consider the next program statement, as you can see here. And I'm referring to the label that was created on the previous line, and I'm invoking the place method. And here you can see I'm making relative X and relative Y, both 0.5. But I'm also passing in this additional option here. I'm making the anchor equal to southeast. Now, the two lines that you can see on this slide, they are part of a computer program that I'll show you in a minute. But what we can say is that when I run the computer program, we're going to get the window you would expect when you're using tkinter with Python. To assist with my explanation of what's going on with these lines of code, I'm going to place the two dotted lines we looked at on the previous slide. And we can find the center of the window here because I've used these values for rel X and rel Y, as you can see here in the code. If we look to this program statement, we can see here we're setting the anchor option to SE, which is southeast. If I take a look at the label, I know southeast is actually here. It's the corner that I'm pointing to. Now, when this program statement executes, what it is going to do, it's going to put this corner here in the center of the window. Why the center? Well, because I've used these values here for relative X and relative Y. So if I move it to the center, we can see the southeast corner of the label has indeed been placed in the center of the window. So these three we can see work together to help position the label, as you can see here. Let's now consider another example. And this example here has got a slight amendment, and the amendment is shown here, where I'm making the background color green. So when this program statement executes, what we're going to have is a green label, as you can see here. Let's move on to the next program statement, and you can see it is almost identical to the one that we saw on the previous slide. The difference being, however, you can see here, I've got SW in quotes, which stands for Southwest. We will place these two program statements into some code, and we know we're going to get this window appearing. And I'm going to show dotted lines there so I can mark off the center. And the center is there because I've chosen these values here. But of course, if you look at the anchor, I've set that to SW. Now, if you look over to the green label in the top right corner of your screen, you'll see that I'm now pointing to southwest. What's going to happen is this corner is going to be placed here in the center of the window. So I'll move the label into position so you can see. And you can see that this corner is placed in the center, and that's been achieved because of the way in which these three cooperate with each other. These two mark the center of the window, and this sets the anchor position that's going to appear in the center. Let's now consider this computer program, and we know what these lines do. We've seen them many times in this playlist. So I'm going to go straight onto these two lines. And you can see in both cases we're making a label and we're setting the text property to a lot of spaces. And you can see I'm making them red and green. So they are the program statements that we saw earlier in this video. I then come here and you can see that each label is taken in turn and I'm placing them onto the window, and in both cases I'm selecting the center of the window by setting rel X and rel Y all to 0.5. But here you can see I'm setting the anchor position to southeast, and this one I'm setting the anchor position to southwest. Now the previous slides have shown you what happens when you do this, so let's move straight to the runtime, and you can see you're going to get this. Those dotted lines have not come from the code, but what you can see is that the red label appears here because the southeast corner, which was defined here, has gone to the center of the screen. The green label appears here because its southwest corner, as defined here, has been placed at the center of the screen. So this small program should give you a better feel for how the relative X and Y values work together with the anchor positions. Let's now consider this computer program, and it's an amendment of the one we've just been concerned with, and you can see the amendment is shown here in the first instance. I've created another label, and this label is blue. I'm then positioning that label with this line of code here, and I'm making the anchor position N for north, so it's going to be the top edge of the label that I'm going to be positioning. So if I now look to the runtime, what you can see is this, and have a look at the blue label, and you can see the top edge of it is placed up against the center of the window. Let me leave you with the following two exercises that I'll show the solution to in the videos that are coming up after this video. Exercise A says, amend the programs covered in this video to produce the following graphical user interface. Gives a hint to say there are 4 labels. Well, let's have a look at the graphical user interface. And you can see there are 4 labels, red, green, blue, and a black label. And you can see they are all round the center of the window, but of course they've all been anchored differently. So you've got to really work out what the anchor position would be for each of the labels. Let's now consider exercise B, and it's asking you to amend the program you've just produced for exercise A, and it's going on to say that there are 5 labels. So have a go at exercise A and exercise B, and in the next videos I'll show you the solution to these exercises. Please consider subscribing to the channel and click the bell to ensure you get an update every time I upload a video. Maybe you would like to consider supporting the development of these free videos via Patreon. In addition, why not follow me on Twitter and also check out the supporting website.